DC Universe Online has been in the transition period for quite some time. Let's talk about it. Hello, heroes and villains. Welcome to Multiverse. Some of you guys may have noticed DC Universe Online has pretty much been in the transition for quite some time, and even one of you guys were pretty much asking about that just a while ago. Basically, how long will the transition last at DC Universe Online? The short answer is we don't really know. Let's go for the long answer now. I wanted to talk about this in my previous video, but there was a lot to talk about, probably too much. So already I probably should have split my previous video in multiple videos, and there was no way I could talk about the transition at DC Universe Online in that video. But basically, DC Universe Online has been in the transition period pretty much ever since EG7 purchased Daybreak. That is pretty much when Nerdoprey left Daybreak. Actually, she left a bit before EG7 purchased the company, but I'm pretty sure they already knew that they were about to be purchased by EG7. It just took them a while to officially announce it. But ever since the EG7 announcement that they were purchasing Daybreak, DC Universe Online has pretty much been in the transition period. The transition should not have lasted this long. Basically, they've been in transition for like 2 years and a half at this point. But there's a few things that happened that pretty much kept the transition going. So basically, the thing that kickstarted the whole transition thing was EG7 purchasing Daybreak. That was the first step. But then afterwards, there would be a few devs here and there that would quit DC Universe Online, that would leave DC Universe Online or leave Daybreak. But then, what really kicked the transition period in high gear is when Jackster, and from what I understand, there's 9 devs that left with Jackster. So when Jackster and the devs left, that truly turned the DC Universe Online transition into maximum overdrive or something like that. Although personally, I was not so surprised to see Jackster leave with a whole bunch of devs. The only real question I had was how come he did not leave sooner? Normally, when a bigger entity purchases a smaller company, so in this case, when EG7 purchased Daybreak, normally the first thing that happens is that the entire upper management gets let go. The reasons for that is quite simple. Basically, there's a new leadership that takes over, and they don't want the old leadership to work against their decisions. For example, let's assume that the EG7 decides that, okay, all our characters must have pink costumes from now on to try to make the game more female friendly, and let's assume that Jackster doesn't agree with that. They wouldn't want Jackster to fight them over it. So they would expect the Jackster to just do what they're asking, put everyone in a pink costume, and that would be the end of it. But what if Jackster does disagree so much that he starts to make a sort of administrative interference? So let's assume EG7 does give the order, okay, we have to put everyone in a pink costume. Jackster doesn't really agree, and then he sort of gives the orders to the designers, okay, eventually we will put all the costumes pink, but don't do it just yet. Or do it, but try to stretch the process so that you never really finish it. So let's say whenever EG7 would say, hey, Jackster, where are our pink costume we asked about? Oh yeah, we're working on it. The designers are working on it, but we have some issue with the software and the rendering doesn't quite work, and we have to re-render everything. I will send you some first draft of those pink costumes soon for approval. We're working on it. It's taking longer than expected. And sadly, administrative interference like that could last forever. So usually, in order to be able to avoid that, what the new leadership would do is that they would come in, they would tell all the upper management, okay, you guys can go. Then they would replace them with people that they do trust. And then from there on, upper management might decide to replace the middle management with people that they do trust, and so on until they pretty much replace everyone who they think might not quite agree with the new direction that the new leadership has in mind. Another step they would take would be to get rid of all redundancies, but I didn't mention that in the previous video, so let's try not to talk about too much stuff today. So normally you would expect them to get rid of all the upper management. So when we saw that Jackster was sticking around, I was a bit surprised because, to be honest, I expected him to be either replaced or to leave on his own. He finally left on his own, but it took longer than I expected. And when he did, he brought, I don't know, half of the studio with him, which again probably would be another argument saying that maybe they should have gotten rid of him as soon as they purchased Daybreak. But maybe he would have left with the whole crew anyway at the time. Who knows? At some point, I was starting to think that the reason why they were not getting rid of Jackster was because of the Marvel MMO game that they were working on. So basically, Daybreak were working on a massive multiplayer for Marvel, while using the Marvel properties. And from what I understand, Jackster was the one link between Daybreak and Marvel. That was Jackster. So he was in charge of the project, but even more than that, he was pretty much the link between Daybreak and Marvel. So for a while, I thought that maybe that was why Jackster was still at Daybreak. Odds are EG7 needed Jackster to be able to go through with the Marvel deal. And I'm not sure if Jackster left because the Marvel deal fell apart. I'm not sure if the Marvel deal fell apart because Jackster left. I was under the impression that maybe Jackster left, he brought a whole bunch of devs with him, and maybe he brought the Marvel MMO with him. I'm not sure at this point. Although there's some people who suggested other reasons why Jackster did leave at Daybreak. I have no idea if those reasons, if there's any truth to those reasons or not. But seeing how Daybreak announced that there was no longer going to be a Marvel MMO pretty much at the same time as Jackster left, I cannot help but think that the two events are linked. Who knows, maybe at some point Jackster will announce that he launches his brand new studio, and maybe they're going to launch a brand new Marvel MMO at that studio. I guess we're going to have to wait and see for that. I could have sworn they had already announced that Jackster was already launching a new studio, but I couldn't find any real information about that. So already DC Universe Online has been in a transition because of the new owner. Basically, the new owners have their own ideas of what they want to do with the game, of the direction they want the game to go into, and we can already saw some of their decisions. I mentioned that before. Basically, the ally system, that is clearly a decision that comes from EG7, whether it comes from the heads at EG7 or the marketing department at EG7. It doesn't really matter. Obviously, the new ally system was made up by people who did not really know anything about DC Universe Online, who did not really know how the marketplace worked with DC Universe Online, and who did not know the DC Universe Online player base at all. Again, whether it's the heads of EG7 who made that decisions or the marketing department at EG7, it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, it clearly was a decision made by someone who had no idea about DC Universe Online, whether about playing the game or even just who the player base was. So already we were in a transition period with all the new decisions that were being made by EG7, but also in a transition period because of the House of Legends. The House of Legends was a huge change for DC Universe Online. It added the evil clamp. Full disclosure, I am against the clamp, so don't be surprised if I do have a bias against it. Although some people seem to think that it was a good thing for the game, I strongly disagree. Although unlike other people, I base my opinion on more than just my opinion. Actually, I have some numbers that pretty much tells me that when we had the clamp added to DC Universe Online, we lost roughly 30% of the audience within 1 week. Now, there's some people that seems to think that that probably was a good thing. We got rid of the scrubs and we only kept the best of the best of the best players, and we got rid of the not so good players. Maybe at the end of the day, we don't really know. But one thing is clear, there is a lot of players that did leave when we did get the clamp. And the clamp was a huge change for the game. Already, the House of Legends was a big change, but basically it's just a new hub that we had access to. But the clamp pretty much affected every single missions in the game. And that meant that the devs had to pretty much go back and rebalance the whole game. They had to rebalance every single missions in the game, and that represented a huge workload for them. Now, in the short term, it probably didn't have too big of an impact. Like, for example, for Batman Day that year, we still got some nice rewards and a healthy dose of rewards for Batman Day that year. But the year after that, all we got was the Batman Ally. So it took a bit of time for us to be able to feel the impact of all the changes thanks to the House of Legends and the clamp. Basically, when we got the next DLC, that is when we started feeling that the devs were probably a bit overworked. Basically, the next DLC was the Legion of Doom DLC, and let's say it was a little bugged, and there was a glitch or two. So right there and then, we could feel that the devs were a bit overworked. And then when we saw some of the rewards for the seasonals after that, the Christmas seasonal, the anniversary seasonal, we started seeing reused assets as opposed to getting new assets. Like normally during the anniversary event, We would get some new styles like the Speed Force styles, or the Fracture styles, or the evil Anti-Monitor styles. So we had to look forward to getting some new styles with the anniversary event. And sadly, after the House of Legends, all we got were reused style. We got a reused style of the Lexo Suit style, and this year we got a reused style of the Doctor Fate style. If at least it had been the reused of a popular style like the Fallen God style or the Black Lantern style, not sure. I don't think there's a lot of people who were saying that we need a new version of the Fate style, but maybe there is and I just don't know about it. So already we were pretty much in a big transition period, transitioning to from before the clamp to after the clamp, and having the devs rebalance the entire game and keep on creating new content on top of that. And then of course when Jackster left with a whole bunch of devs, then it became even worse. Although Daybreak were able to take basically all the devs that were working on a Marvel game and have them work on DC Universe Online. Although obviously those new devs would have to learn to work on DC Universe Online, maybe to learn the production process, maybe to learn some new tools or some older tools that they had never used before. So that again would pretty much create a new transition process of transitioning those people from the Marvel game to the DC game. And as you guys saw in some of my previous videos, even though they were able to take a whole bunch of people from the Marvel games, they still need to hire more people still, especially in positions of leadership like a creative director, art director, and all that good stuff. If you want to know more about that, go watch my art director video. And again, once they do hire those people, they will have to get used to working within Daybreak, to work on DC Universe Online, to work with the current creative team on DC Universe Online. In an ideal world, they would hire the producer first, then the producer would hire the creative director that he wants to work with, the creative director would hire the art director that he wants to work with, and the art director would hire the lead designer that he wants to work with. Sadly, this is not an ideal world, so it could be that they hire those people in different orders, and that would probably extend the transition process, at least for a while. If any of you guys are familiar with sports, it's something we often see in sports. Like right now, the team where I currently live, they're pretty much in a transition period. They're they call it a reconstruction period. Basically, they had a crappy team. They fired a whole bunch of people, upper management, lower management, middle management. They replaced them with new people, and then those new people have to pretty much rebuild the team, hoping to rebuild a winning team eventually. And sometimes in sports, that process can last 3, 4, 5 years easily. So with DC Universe Online, once they do manage to hire a new producer, a new creative director, a new art director, once they do manage to hire all those people, odds are those people will also be in the process of rebuilding the DC Universe Online team, at least a little bit. Now, hopefully, it will not take another 5 years. We've already been under reconstruction for 2.5 years. Sadly, it's obvious that we are still going to be in transition and reconstruction for at least 2023. If all goes well, with a bit of luck, maybe by the end of 2023, they will have hired everyone they need, they would have rebuilt their team, and they would have filled all the empty positions. We don't really know just yet. So how long will this transition period last? We don't know. Hopefully, it will last only until the end of 2023. Maybe it could be sooner than that, but it could also be longer than that. Until they actually do hire the people that they still need to hire, there's no way to know for sure. And again, once they do hire a new creative director, maybe that new creative director will want to do some sort of house cleaning to be able to get rid of some of the designer they don't like and replace them with people that they do like or that they do trust. So again, even once they do manage to fill the, let's say, the leadership positions, then those leaders might decide to do a bit of house cleaning to be able to get the people that they do trust. But until they do hire those creative directors, art directors, and all those people, there's no way to predict how long DC Universe Online will remain in transition. At this point in time, all we can really do is wait and see.